Hello, podcast listeners. Put on your creative cap because your host with the most, myself, JJ Gordon, I'm going to take you on an adventure in creativity. Tucker and I are going to talk about some of the projects we've loved to do before, and we have some special audio we're going to be putting into this episode as well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode on creativity. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
We're rolling. Oops. Well, whatever. I'm gonna ride with it. I'm right.
Yeah,
I'm
why
going
not,
with
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
I mean, that's the realness of it.
If for those of you just tuning in, JJ just gave me the news. I forgot to cut out in the last episode. I forgot to cut out the part where I go pee, and you don't hear me actually pee. I don't take you with me to go pee. JJ and I have often been using Zencaster, as we're doing right now, to record this one. And usually it's in the morning on Sundays or Saturdays when I've had a ton of coffee. So there's almost always at least some pee break that happens, initiated by me. And I always cut it out. And I guess I forgot last time. And I'm not going to go back and cut it out and then re-upload it. I'm just going to leave it as is. In fact, I did that. That's on me. I did listen through to that one too, but I just must have just not like gone, oh, hey, I'm supposed to cut this part out. Didn't think about it.
Maybe this is the prime opportunity for people to go back and listen and be like, ooh, the realism of this podcast is just, I mean, it's really hitting all the levels.
I'm really glad that it's not one of those lavalier mic'd up situations where you take the microphone with you, because back when I worked in poker television, everyone who's sitting at the table is wearing a lav microphone. And when they'd get up from the table, if we saw them get up, we try to remember to mute their mics so that we wouldn't have to even hear what it is they're saying. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. And weird stuff goes out over the live internet stream. Sounds of people going to the bathroom, people talking about things that they shouldn't be. One guy actually read off his credit card number over the internet because he was telling it to his mom or something on the phone. And so we had to go, hey, dude, you read your credit card number over the internet, and now you're going to have to cancel that number, because he gave all the information for it. So, hey, guess what? We're not live. We're actually edited, and that happened, sort of.
And it's a great segue into this week, which is I wanted to talk with you, Tucker, about some of the most satisfying creative endeavors that we've ever taken on. And this podcast is definitely one of them. So much so that we're just fine telling people, listen, we need a minute. We need just a solid minute of silence in this. So here's what I think is important to understand about creativity. So there's so many people out there who say well, I'm not creative, and that's not true. I mean, I think, there are people I could never go and paint a painting. Well, I can't paint a painting either. I find other things that feed my soul. If you are invested in a hobby, that is a form of creativity. Sometimes I think creativity and curation go hand in hand when it becomes two things. And the creative things that I find in my life help balance the drudgery of other things. Nobody likes to pay their taxes, but part of me paying my taxes involves me taking time to look back at the last year and say gosh, did I do anything that filled my cup when it comes to my soul as well as my pockets? And, this podcast has been one of those things that fills my soul out there. It's so much fun to have conversations with people. And of course, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for my good buddy Tucker taking this on with me. But many people might not know this isn't our first foray into the audio journey, Tucker.
Right. I had to look up the dates for it today just to make sure I knew them correctly. Back in 2007, there was before podcasting was even really a thing at all. There was you could try to start a low power radio station, which is basic. You can still try to do it now, but a low power radio station is one that can only transmit over so far of a distance, and you got to go through the FCC and stuff. And this organization in town called Radio Free Fargo paired up with NDSU's radio department to create a low power radio station in town. And on the Radio Free Fargo side of things, anyone in the community who wanted to start a show could, and you could have a weekly radio show. And so I talked to JJ, and we ended up starting a show called the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour, which was just supposed to be a nonsensical name. And the ongoing joke in it was that any new guest that would come in and hang out with us, they would be given the opportunity to come up with like a fake title and territory that they hailed from. And so I was like the regent of something. I can't remember what, and I can't remember what you were either. It was so long ago. But it was just a format for people to come in and hang out and talk. And I actually have most of the recordings of all of that. It's incredibly raw. It's embarrassing to listen to. Sounds really crappy because didn't really know how to work a soundboard correctly, but it's sort of a time capsule, and it was a lot of fun. And so we kind of were doing that back then, which led to one of my favorite early projects working on with you, JJ, was when we decided to make promos, like little 30-second promos that would run after other shows for our show. And you and I, on a fateful night at Applebee's, sat down and we brainstormed out like 7 or 8 of these things.
And what was great is we said, we should approach these things like mini news blasts.
Well, we were ripping off The Onion,
right?
Flat out ripping off 100%.
Because like The Onion had like Onion Radio News.
Yeah, it was basically the same idea, but we called it I can't remember what we called it. Even I'll have to go back and listen to it now.
I remember that our fictional announcer was named Martin Pretty and is voiced by previous guest Steve Poitras.
Do you remember if he brought that name or if you came up with that?
That's got to be a Tucker Lucas name if I've ever heard one before.
I don't
Martin
think I
Pretty?
named him that. I think Steve named him that. I think Martin Pretty is a name that Steve has used in the past. I'll have to confirm with him now. My thinking is that he was like, "Hey, can I call myself this?" And we were like, "Sure, whatever, go for it."
I remember it was a big deal too because we were like, if we approach Steve Poitras, I mean, is he a serious journalist and won't want to do these things? But he was totally game for it.
I'm trying to remember the timeline. I think it must have been shortly after I had been in Romeo and Juliet with him, I think. Maybe.
Oh, definitely. It was definitely a Shakespeare in the Park connection, because that was where it's like, it'd be easy to approach him in this.
Yeah.
Because did he play the friar?
Yeah.
I
think that's the timeline, is that had just happened. So that's how I kind of knew him, I believe.
So in these news segments.
Oh, actually, hold on a second. 2007, no Mercedes Ray. He would have worked with us on that already.
Oh, is that what we're getting?
Well, because Mercedes Ray, I think, premiered in 2007.
You're right. I think Mercedes Ray is how you approached him, or Romeo and Juliet is how you approached him for Mercedes Ray. Mercedes Ray led to this, right?
Got it. Okay. Yep. Must be. Yep.
So we decided to make these promos, and they're fake, kind of news magazine stories, more or less. And when I go back to listen to some of them now, I'm like, oh, I'm a bigger person now, and I probably wouldn't have written the Down and Out and Downtown one by today's standards, but I do feel like there's a lot of fun in these. And I think of them fondly. I've had them on like 6 different iPods over the years. And every now and then I will, spin these things up. It's only probably like 7 minutes total, start to finish.
If that, actually.
And so,
in fact, I do have the files here, and JJ, if you want, I can put them in this episode for our listeners here, if you would like. Maybe we'll end the episode today with them.
No,
or something.
Forget that. Let's spin them up right now.
It's the United Nations Radio News. Presbyterian Church volunteer mistakenly uses menorah clip art to jazz up Christmas bulletin. I'm Martin Pretty. Marjorie Benson, a 7-year volunteer at the United Fellowship Presbyterian Church on 8th Street in Maine, mistakenly used menorah clip art while designing Noel News, her church's annual Yuletime publication. When reached for comment, Benson expressed frustration with Microsoft Word's ambiguous classification of December holiday images.
Well, no, I just thought it was a bunch of candles. I didn't realize it was being used by that other religion.
In an effort to prevent future indiscretions, Benson plans to stick to using poinsettias and snowflakes. This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. Cowboy hat utilized for non-cow wrangling purposes. It's the United Nations Radio News. I'm Martin Pretty. Scott Redlinger, a 22-year-old area college freshman, annoyed his friends Thursday by utilizing a cowboy hat for non-cow wrangling purposes at a local dance club. Redlinger, known by his roommate Alex Mayo for using totally idiotic moves to impress women, had expressed satisfaction with the hat's success the following day.
Scott thought he had all these women swarming around him because they liked a stupid cowboy hat. Little did he know the chicks at the bar had a running bet on who could knock it off his head with their breasts.
Mayo later added that next time Scott will probably put on a fedora or something really stupid like that. This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. McDonald's employee ponders race relations over ice cream twist cone. It's the United Nations Radio News. I'm Martin Pretty. New ethnic and cultural understanding was achieved Friday afternoon at a downtown McDonald's restaurant, where employee Donald Mackey pondered race relations while preparing a chocolate and vanilla ice cream twist cone. Mackey, a 24-year-old grad school student, was readying a customer's order when he was struck by the similarity of the frozen dessert treat to the cultural difficulties between different races.
I never looked at it this way before. It's like we can exist as a beautiful people if we all just stick together. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves melted at the bottom of a sugary wafer cake cone.
Mackey later pointed out the revelation to his managers, while also noting the similarity between the layers of a Big Mac and the social struggles of the middle class. This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. Kiefer Sutherland still kicks total ass. It's the United Nations Radio News. I'm Martin Pretty. Upon finishing the first episode of Season 5 of the acclaimed Fox program 24, Key Grip Danny Anderson was quoted as proclaiming that lead actor Kiefer Sutherland still kicks total ass. When reached for comment, Anderson said,
"You should see him in this show. He still has tons of intensity. I watched The Lost Boys on TBS the night before and realized that he's been kicking ass for over 20 years now."
Sutherland, who turns 40 in 2006, has been an accomplished actor in Hollywood since his premiere film 1983's Max Dugan Returns. Anderson admits to not having a complete knowledge of Sutherland's career, but still claims to have been a big fan even before Sutherland lent him $5 at the studio commissary for lunch. This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. Nations homeless abuse free taco bar. It's the United Nations Radio News. I'm Martin Pretty. Tom Washington, owner and manager of the Beef and Brandy in Toledo, Ohio, has asked the city council members to do something about the, quote, damn dirty homeless. Washington recently opened a patio section at his restaurant that included a buffet line for patrons to make their own tacos. The service was designed to entice people to patronize the bar and then enjoy a free taco with their beverage of choice. Upon opening, several of the city's homeless began wandering over and making their own tacos. In an effort to stop the constant plundering, Washington has erected a 3-foot-high fence and a stern sign that reads, paying customers of Beef and Brandy only. Boxcar Marty, spokesman for the Down and Out of downtown, had this to say in regard to the accusations.
What do you think we are?
Barbarians? It's just a total lack of disrespect. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go pee in that alley and yell some unintelligible stuff at that hydrant.
The City Council's decision on the matter is still pending. This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. It's the United Nations Radio News. College student creates collage about collagen. I'm Martin Pretty. Concordia College student Carol Collins used crayons and crepe paper to create the collage about collagen. Collins created the collage for a class in creative media. Collins also has collages planned for her conducting and cooking courses. When coerced into comment, Collins recalled eating copious amounts of cauliflower to fuel her creative genes. Daughter of Colonel and Catherine Collins, her parents complain about her callousness in not calling home and non-cooperation when at home.
Creating collages is careful work. Calling home takes time, and I still have to cover my notes that I carry around everywhere.
In response to her statement, Colonel Collins called us with this comment: "That's crap." This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo. Mime walking in 3/4 time, hit by car moving in 8/8 time. This is Martin Pretty with the United Nations Radio News. Tragedy occurred Sunday afternoon when a mime walking in 3/4 time was struck by a motor vehicle moving in 8/8 time. Marcel Devereaux, a local area street performer, was performing the piece Slow Dramatic Walk when he wandered into the street and in front of a 1989 Mercury Tracer performing 5 miles above the speed limit. After the accident, Devereaux had this to say: "It is unknown whether or not Devereaux will return to the neighborhood to annoy the hell out of everyone he sees once more." This has been the United Nations Radio News. For more news updates, tune in every Wednesday night at 10 to the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour on 105.9 Radio Free Fargo.
That was fun. I loved making those.
I better remember to edit those in, just like I didn't edit out my pee break.
Yeah, wouldn't that be weird if it was just a quick jump to that? Okay, so I was thinking about these other things that have brought me this, this surge of creativity, these things I've been so proud of and had so much fun doing over the years. When I taught summer theater in Rutland, North Dakota, the second year we did one acts, and the third year we decided, what we should try is we should write our own script. And we knew the kids well enough at that point that we wrote specifically for them and stuff that they would think is fun. So things that had special effects and things that had fun costume pieces and stuff like that. Easily one of the highlights of my creative life was working down in Rutland on those shows. And then when I've had a chance to do game shows on air during my KFGO day job, there is something so fun about reviving an old game show format and putting it on air and having immediate feedback from listeners. That has been just a ton of fun for me. And of course, the Baby Bumpy shorts that Tucker and I did, I also find to be absolutely hilarious. Now, if you've never heard of the Baby Bumpy shorts, allow me to inform you. The idea is that there is a giant man baby. It's a man-sized man who happens to be wearing baby clothes and is more or less a baby, but also not a baby. And if you're going, wait, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Well, when I ran for mayor in 2006, I actually had to ask Tucker, could you scrub the internet and get rid of this? Because the last thing I want is someone to be like, well, here's the mayoral candidate wearing a baby diaper and thank heaven for little girl's bib.
You know what? The my favorite memory of the whole Baby Bumpy saga, which would take us, there's a whole lot to unpack there, and I don't think what we will today, but there's one memory I have of that entire saga, which was watching Baby Cream at your house. It must have been a Christmas party or something, and your grandmother was there, and she saw it and she howled with laughter. And I mean, howled with laughter at seeing you dressed like that, and knowing that we had made something that made your grandmother feel that happy in that moment made me incredibly happy too.
Yeah, it was pretty dang beautiful. And then the things that came from We only made 2. I feel like we had plotted out probably like 6 or 7 of them, but we actually only ended up making 2. But the second one is where you reinvented the vomit gun for us. Because it included projectile vomit.
Yep.
And having to do the early internet research of like, well, how would you do this? Okay, well, you need 2 PVC pipes of different diameter. And then like, well, how do you make convincing looking vomit? Well, you're going to start with a base of blank. Those were so much fun. And the great part is I didn't have to learn any lines whatsoever. All I had to do was just be me.
And also, you amped it up a bit because I had asked you to come up with some kind of a baby costume. And I just said, for a diaper, you could just take like a sheet or something and just, fold it into a diaper size or something so that you're still nicely covered. But I don't know where we're going to find a diaper for you. And you said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And why you chose this, I guess you can explain. But JJ went out to like a thrift shop and bought a diaper cover, so like a cloth covering that you would put on a diaper, an actual one for an actual infant-sized one, and squeeze like in some feat of science and black magic was able to squeeze himself into that thing.
Yeah, I was pretty proud. And if you recall, it's a little elephant, so it had little elephant ears.
Do you have that?
Yeah, it's still in my costume tub. That, and then I got a little tiny t-shirt, and the t-shirt is child size as well. So by the time I get into it, I mean, it's literally pushing my flesh out as much as it can, the way, a poorly stuffed sausage would as well. And then I thought the real thing that defined Baby Bumpy is the bonnet.
The
nice
bonnet's
flat
killer.
bonnet.
And the t-shirt has a saying on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it says "Thank heaven for little girls." Because at first we hadn't decided what sex Baby Bumpy was. In fact, I don't think.
There was no. Yeah, it was sort of more like it really doesn't matter. The gender of Baby Bumpy can absolutely be indeterminate and should really just serve whatever the story needs. And so, yeah, but Baby Bumpy, I'm trying to remember if Baby Bumpy's gender is ever referred to by his father, General Bumpy.
It is. He Greg Carlson, frequent previous guest Greg Carlson, plays Baby Bumpy's father, and he goes, he wants your melon. He loves melon.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that was a fun time.
So, but that is one of those things that even to this day, I had so much fun making that. I had so much fun. Remember we had a long conversation because the first Baby Bumpy short is pretty simple. I mean, it's a static shot for the beginning of a gentleman or of Baby Bumpy in the background eating ice cream, and then a gentleman walks into the foreground and looks at Baby Bumpy, and then Baby Bumpy looks back. The gentleman continues to move.
Gerald Ustanko is the character's name.
And then the
second appearance.
And then Baby Bumpy continues to eat the ice cream cone, but it falls off of the ice cream falls off the cone, and that's when suddenly the baby looks at it and goes, "Oh, son of a bitch!"
Yeah, it was made for the 2-minute at the Fargo Film Festival.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And yes, and it was just supposed to be kind of like weird and shocking and what have you. But it was a ton of fun to do that. And then when we did the follow-up, Yummy in My Tummy, that was actually, I just remember this too, that was the very first thing I shot with Matt McGregor.
Was it really?
That was the very first thing of mine. That was the very first thing of mine that I worked with a shooter instead of me just shooting it. And it felt amazing. It was like, oh, this is so much better. Yeah, it's just kind of funny to think about that. I also love thinking about that old house of Greg's that we shot that in, because so many like student films have been shot in Greg's old house, and you would know it by all the times you would see that wallpaper that shows up in the background of it. Even though I never went to school for filmmaking, I have a whole bunch of like shorts that I call my student films, and the Baby Bumpy ones are some of those. So they're like ones that I would never ever in a million years like send to a film festival or something. And even now when I watch them, I'm kind of like, I'm wincing at all the mistakes I've made and all the things that are and are not good about them. But they're a time capsule and they're precious, and they really remind me of how much fun it is to work with your friends on making movies.
It also, it should be noted too that the home that we shot the second one in also has a history with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I ever met Bob Dylan, I've got a great icebreaker that I can just
And he'd be like, "Who are you?"
Be like, also, actually, I've got two of them. I'm like, not only did I film a short in which I was dressed as a giant baby in a home that you're affiliated with, but I also did a pretty awful impression of you in another one of my favorite creative endeavors, which was doing the play, The Santaland Diaries, which was a one-man show at Theater B that Tucker directed. And that was, here's the reason I like that as a creative endeavor. A lot of times when I do creative things, they are just fun. That's what I'm doing them for, is they're fun and you get some kind of neat product at the end. But that was something that stretched me creatively more than anything else.
Right.
And
massive challenge.
Yeah, like any good stretch, it felt great afterwards. It was painful during the time, but as soon as that show was actually up and running, it turned out to be one of the most fun times I've ever had in my entire life. And I value that so much because the action of creativity, which is creation, right? Like that's where the word creativity comes from. It's the activity of creating. And I have so much fun doing that. That's so much fun. I have just an absolute blast. And then to be able to look back, especially when your creativity leads to some kind of a product or a memory, it is great because you can hold that. You can have that memory for so long.
I've always tried to. I have so many different attempts over the years where I've tried to quantify creativity. If I wanted to try to explain creativity, not just to other people, but even to myself when I struggle with that notion. And right now I'm at the point where I think if something is creative, that's something that originated in your head before it actually existed. Meaning, even if you're like, man, it'd be awesome would be some burgers right now. And so you go and you bring together all the things you need to make burgers, and you make some burgers, and however you decide to make them, and whether or not you're going really specific in how you're flavoring it because you like it a certain way or not, but you're engaged in an act of creation. And then a lot of people will take that act of creation and use it as a form of expression. Sometimes the expression is very specific, like I have a very specific message I want to get out, for a political or social cause. But other times it's just an expression of the preferences of your brain. It could be the expression of my brain really preferred the colors in this arrangement, or that I grill the burger this way. And so creativity can be you starting a business. It did not exist before. It started existing in my head, and then I brought it into the world. That at its core is probably what creativity is.
I think that's a great way to describe it. And
okay, cool.
And it shouldn't be, it shouldn't always be easy. It shouldn't always be difficult. It shouldn't always have the same end result. Does it?
Yeah, I'm not even certain where should be.
Yeah, there you go.
In that,
And I find that people find creativity in different avenues that I think are so interesting. It's just, again, I go back to painting, where when people say like, "Oh, I'm not creative, I couldn't paint that," be like, "No, that's not."
Yeah, someone in that instance, I think what they're trying to say is that I'm not. That's not my skill level of painting that I'm seeing, and that's like, okay, yeah, that's probably true. That's probably 100% true, but that has nothing to do with whether or not you're creative or if you could achieve that.
Right. If you are a carpenter and you found a unique way to wrap wood around a post, so it's not just a metal post, That is creativity. You are creating something. You're using your imagination and then skill set to create something out of nowhere. If you're a great public speaker, you use your creative mindset to create that thing that engages the audience in a way. And I just absolutely love that. Tucker, can you think of something where you have just felt like this is one of those creative pieces that I love to think about?
Meaning something that I've made?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, directing Santaland is up there for sure. And it's this, if anything, this is not, I can't, it's hard for me to answer this question in the past tense because I'm so currently focused on the future tense right now with a project I'm working on, which I can't say the name of yet because we haven't announced the thing yet, but it's a play coming up next year. And that is actually the thing that I'm the most into right now. But behind me, making Mercedes Ray was such a period of time that I treasure, even though I was still an incredibly, incredibly young filmmaker, very green. I would call that another student film of mine. But so many amazing memories were made during that. And that was where I really solidified my friendship with, the people at Theater B. And you and I were working on this thing together, and Greg was involved, and it was a fun concept, and we had a fun premiere at the Fargo Theater. And so that's another one that really stands out. But I think the ones that stand out more than anything are the ones that I have the most battle scars from, including I've already told the story plenty of times, but of the door frame falling on my head while doing a play, or obviously the creation of Resurrex and the destruction of part of my soul during all of that BS. And the dozens or so of projects that I've tried to start that I failed to launch with and didn't see through, or things that I started but then that got finished years later. There's a lot of them, and then I keep a document of all the creative. Not necessarily. It's not me going, oh, I want to be creative today. It's more like there are all these things that I wish sort of existed, and I can't stop thinking about what I would do to make them. And so at some point I'll follow an impulse, but because I have so many impulses along those lines, it can be really difficult to know where to focus myself. So I have to just sort of collect them in like a Word document and then get around to them if I can find the time to, including like other podcasts and films I want to make and things like that, or other like other hobbies I want to pick up too that I'm really interested in, but I know I literally don't have the time to.
I've got I've got 3 playlists on Spotify that when I'm working on something, whether I'm writing or sketching it out or just trying to figure out like how the logistics work, I go back because they are most of them are movie scores that I feel have an energy to the score itself that brings me to another place. And I like that. I've also recently started surrounding myself with the things that gave me awe when I was a little kid and the things that inspire me. So, for example, right now, I am looking at the Kenner throwback of the real Ghostbusters animated series, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Nice.
The Saturday Night Live Tina Fey and Amy Poehler set that they released at Comic-Con. Several Back to the Future Lego pieces, a Mr. Bean bobblehead. Let's see. Oh gosh, there's a John Candy, like one of those Christ candles that people write, but it's John Candy's face in one, a Sesame Street bank, and at one point I got these awesome little pigs. They're little tiny clay pigs, and what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to give them to friends, and when you look at them, they're supposed to make you think of your friend.
I kind of see what you're saying when you're saying that. So you're talking about these are sort of things that you like that inspire you, or maybe help put you in like a mental state that is more conducive to creative work. But
what they do is they drive me. Like, so if I'm ever sitting here and I go like, oh God, like maybe I should just work at a 9 to 5 job for insurance, I will look up at some of these things and I will instantly be brought back to when I was younger and I saw these things and I thought, oh my God, that's all I want to do. All I want to do is create something that brings such joy and merriment and wonder to somebody else as these things have given to me. If I had a chance to sit down with Robert Zemeckis, all I want to do the whole time is just be like, thank you so much. I can't tell you the number of Sunday afternoons you've saved me from because I was able to put in Back to the Future 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I will pop on this playlist. I'll start working. If I start to feel, like, oh, this isn't going the way I want, this isn't what I need, I'll look at these things. And then I remember, I've done so much research on so many of these things that, like, for example, on Saturday Night Live, the way that they schedule the week for Saturday Night Live is, to me, insane, because they're saying, we want you to be creative, but this is the factory that you need to be creative in. And it's never ending. Right. On Monday, you get to meet the guest host. You get to talk to them a little bit. You start writing sketches and you write. So that on Tuesday, you are just marathoning at this point. And then I think it's on Wednesday morning that they do a read through, and all scripts need to be in, let's say, by 7 a.m. sharp. And that's the cutoff. So people will spend all night Tuesday night, literally all night, writing these sketches. You get them turned in. The table read, they'll pick, let's say that 50 sketches are turned in. At the table read, they will choose 20, maybe even less, that'll get allowed to be polished a little bit more, so that by Thursday they whittle that number down even more, because then they start building the sets, collecting the costumes, getting those pieces together that they need to actually create the sketch. By the time they do the dress rehearsal of it on Saturday, which they tape, they will then cut some more or move them around in the position they're in the show. And then by midnight on Saturday, the show, there goes the show, it's done. And then you start the whole process over in 36 hours. And to me, that is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. And I think that people are fueled creatively during that time because you have to get something. And then I also think there's probably a lot of drugs.
Oh, of course there's drugs, especially SNL in the 70s.
Right. Like, I mean, I think most of those sketches, if you tested the paper from them, they would be 20% cocaine. But to me, that sounds a little grueling.
Was Harold Ramis ever involved in SNL?
He was not. He was on SCTV.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if there was ever the SNL connection. So when did him and Murray get connected then?
They were both Second City people.
Okay, got it.
So, and so through their Second City-ness, they started working on these little pieces together. And what's interesting is Harold Ramis, of course, was one of the writers of Ghostbusters, and Bill Murray was in that. And then he directed Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. But they didn't talk for a long time after Groundhog Day. There was a serious rift, and I don't think that there was ever necessarily a deep-rooted friendship between the two of them. I think they worked well together. And to me, that's something that I sort of go like, what? How could that be possible? No way. They had to have been best friends. Look at the awesome creativity they put out together. And that, I think, is a great next step in this conversation, which is some of the best creative teams in the business have been people who cannot stand each other outside of the creation process itself.
Right. What do you know what their rift was about?
I think that Bill Murray saw something different in what Groundhog Day was going to be than what Harold Ramis wanted to make it. For example, Stephen Tobolowsky tells an amazing story about how originally in the script for Groundhog Day, it was much sillier. And there's a sequence where Bill Murray trashes his hotel room, shaves his head into a mohawk, and goes to bed. And the next day he wakes up and everything's fine. And they actually shot that sequence, which cost a lot of money.
Right.
Like the wig alone was like $3,000 that they had to put, Bill Murray in. And then they shot the sequence. They're looking at it, and Harold Ramis and the writer and his co-writer are like, this does exactly what we need it to do, but it doesn't, watching him tear apart this room with a chainsaw doesn't really do anything for us. And so what they decide to do is they said, we're going to scrap this. And they reshot it where Bill Murray breaks the pencil, puts it on his bedside table, and the next morning the pencil's still back together. And so I think Harold Ramis as a director was working through the process of like, okay, exactly what is this movie supposed to be and what's it going to do? And Bill Murray just had a totally different idea of what he wanted to do. And I've heard people say, you know, Bill Murray can be kind of a salty guy to work with. You get an amazing product, but you know, you also have to deal with, you know, Murray himself. There's another great story where Bill Murray and Chevy Chase, when Chevy Chase came back to host SNL the second season, they got into a full-on fist fight in John Belushi's dressing room. That is infamous in Second City lore. And again, these are two people who wrote amazing sketches together, you know, and did some amazing little pieces, and then would go on to work in Caddyshack, completely improvising an entire like 9-minute scene. And lo and behold, they're two people who just did not get along very well off camera together. And so I think and I know I'm only citing movies and sketch comedy, but I know it exists in other places in the world. Trust me. I know that there are bands who the band members can't stand each other, but they make some of the most amazing music you're ever going to hear.
Right.
There are writers out there who absolutely cannot stand their writing partner, but together they can create stories that are so rich and engaging. You're going to stay up until 3:00 in the morning just to finish a book. And there are other people who collaborate, and it's great. Tucker, you're one of those people who I feel like you and I work really well together. We've found a really good pace. But then there are other people that even our creative process is different. And I think that that's such a douchey thing to say, the creative process, the process of creating. But it's true. It's whether you call it the creative process or you're someone who sits there and says like, yeah, when I make some stuff and you just don't want to make stuff. For example, this is another great example. If you work well in the kitchen with somebody, you should continue cooking and baking with that person.
Yeah.
If you do not work well in a kitchen with somebody else, you may want to readdress that because tensions can flare up. It's a hot environment, and the slightest change can spell disaster.
I definitely know my place when it comes to that because I'm so bad at it. I'm not skilled at all because I haven't put in the time. So this is not me being someone who says I can't paint a painting. No, I can learn to cook. I just haven't yet. But that means that any time I have assisted someone, I try to be as submissive as I possibly can be and just be like, you tell me when to breathe. You tell me where to go and what to do because I've messed up way too many times and been the object of scorn and raised tensions because of a misstep in the kitchen.
I think that is a good reason where you can also say like, listen, there's some creative things that I've tried and I'm like, nope, this isn't my realm. And I'm going to leave that to someone else who does better things than. It's one of the things like I love making movies, but my skills at video editing are shit. They're awful. I know the software that's there and I look at it and I'm like, this is just not my forte. I'm not the person who's supposed to be sitting there and coming up with creative ways and like, oh, this is the action moment I'm going to edit on. I know that when I watch it, I could give someone notes about what I think about it. But the actual sitting down and plotting and plugging away, it's why when Tucker and I used to do the 48-hour film project where they would give you a character, a line of dialogue, and a genre on Friday night. And by Sunday night, you'd have to turn in a completely original up to 7-minute long movie that you created just that weekend. I was useless once it came to the editing time. It'd be like, all right, guys, does everyone have enough soda?
Oh God. I mean, even if I met me then now, I'd be like, well, this guy's useless too, because everything I knew absolutely almost nothing at that time. So I knew just enough to use iMovie. And now I would just go back and just be like, get out of the way, kid. I would just be like what took me an hour, like what took me an entire night to edit, I could edit now in under an hour without question. Like really, really fast.
Well, don't forget at that time too, we were upload. So you would film on mini DV, which was a small tape, and you would have to upload the footage in real time.
Yep.
So if you shot, let's say 3 hours worth of footage, 3 hours was killed just sitting there waiting and watching and making sure everything was going all right as you connected what was called a FireWire to your computer to watch it upload. Nowadays, you shoot onto like an SD card, if you will, and it's a matter of loading the information like any other hard drive source onto your computer. And God forbid, think about this, Tucker. We never had to live through an era where the creative filmmaking process included you shooting something and hoping that everything went well. And then you sent it to be developed.
Right.
And then you waited, a couple of weeks and you got it back. And then you're watching it all now, raw footage format on a projector, hoping that things are fine. I remember another creative process that I had a lot of fun making, but at the time was incredibly frustrating, was my friend Jared was filming like one of his senior pieces for the Minneapolis Community and Technical College, where it was set in fact, it was set in the same exact park where we filmed the Baby Bumpy short where I'm eating ice cream. I guess that park is sort of out of the way enough where we could take it over and not have to worry.
Yeah, it's in South Moorhead, right?
Yeah, it's in South Moorhead, and it's kind of behind a housing track, and it's, there's nothing that overlooks it, so it's a perfect place to go.
I think that's where we went and filmed, or maybe it was Trollwood that we filmed the gorilla fight with Mercedes Ray. Maybe that was Trollwood. I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah.
Jared's film. Was this the one with the magic wand?
No, that we filmed in Minneapolis.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And the problem is we filmed that on the streets in Minneapolis, and we realized, having all of these other stuff around makes it way more difficult. So we found this secluded area. We filmed this. We were filming it on
Were you filming it on 16?
I think we were filming it on 16 millimeter film, and he had a completely separate audio source that was recording, the audio. And here's the problem. We're doing it in the middle of the winter. So even him, who's running the camera, he has gloves and mittens on. And the premise of the story is pretty great, which is previous guests, Natalie Deutsch and Jake Harchie, were hiking, and Jake trips and he breaks a leg. And so we buried him in snow up to his hips and put fake snow pants on, like, so that I could come around him as a ranger and like manipulate the leg. And it was, I mean, it was pretty funny when you go back and watch it. But at the end of the first day, Jared looks at us and he goes, "Guys, I don't know when we ran out of film, but we ran out of film at one point." And so it wasn't and I remember he came, like, I was working at a video store at the time, and he showed up and he brought me a piece of his mom's famous chocolate cake, and he goes, "Chocolate cake's good, isn't it, buddy?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I love this cake." He's like, "Yeah, you're in a good mood, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes,
"It was to soften the blow."
Yeah, he goes, "All day tomorrow we got to go back and pretty much reshoot the whole thing." And so I was like, "You son of a..."
Yeah, I've never, I shouldn't say luckily, I still want to, but I've never shot anything on film. I've thought about doing some Super 8 stuff, and I might still do that. That's on my list of a million different things I'd like to try to do. But if I do that, it would be sort of experimental. It wouldn't be me trying to organize a bunch of stuff. If anything, I think I'd be maybe just taking a Super 8 camera to the lakes or something, just shooting with friends.
Has there been anything outside of your normal creative wheelhouse that you've ever had to do that you thought, "Oh my God, this is so much fun. This is so thrilling"? Yeah. For example, Trollwood Performing Arts School asked me to host their alumni celebration, which was a fundraiser they did every holiday season when all these people would be coming back to visit their folks and family in Fargo. And so they'd grab people who were on Broadway at the time and people who were, professional commercial actors in Hollywood and had their SAG cards and all of this great stuff. And they would have them put on essentially a show and say like, oh, listen, the two of you, you were Gaston and you were LeFou. So in Broadway, or in our production of Beauty and the Beast and, 2003. So you're going to redo that. We're just going to have you redo it. And for them, it's effortless because they can sing and they can dance and they're used to that thing. And they're like, and JJ, we're going to have you do a musical number with this other girl who's co-hosting with you. And I said, great, I'm out. I'm not going to do this because singing is not one of my skill sets. I love music. I love to hear people sing. And my God, you're not going to find a guy who's more interested in musical theater on this podcast than me. And
that's true.
And but I just know
that is a 100% true factual statement.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I can do this. And they said, oh, no, you'll be fine. And plus, Sam will help you get through all this stuff. And so I remember the first time we sang it, and even the pianist goes, you need to pick a speed. She goes, I'll follow you, but you need to pick one speed. And we were doing a song called Friendship from the musical Anything Goes, which is a Cole Porter musical. And it's about two crooks, two con people who are talking about how they've got this great friendship, but really, they'd throw one of them under the bus at any moment if they had a chance to make a buck. And I remember I practiced and practiced and practiced, and my wife listened to me practice and practice and practice. And the last song that we sang from the end of the night was a song from Beauty and the Beast. And the whole, everyone who was involved in this alumni show was supposed to sing it. And I remember being like, I'm just going to mouth it. I don't want to ruin this experience for anyone I end up, having to be next to sing. And I had so many people come up afterwards and tell me that was so much fun. You were great. You were so funny. And then it just ends, right? No, I want to be like, but maybe next time you don't sing so much. And right. I remember even until 2 days before the show, trying to give them an out, saying you guys, you do not have to have me do this. We can cut this. I can do something else. She could sing a song and I could back her up in some way. I'll do physical comedy while she's doing it. And they're like, no, we want it to be song. We want it to be song. And to me, that's one of the problems with Trollwood too, is the fact that they concentrate so much on all these musical numbers and things. And I'm like, no, there's other great pieces of theater and comedy that we could do that won't make me sweat so much because I was so sweaty and disgusting that I was just like, nobody wants to see this. Don't look at me right now.
Luckily, I burn them enough times that they don't ask me for anything anymore.
Yeah, they're just they're like, should we call Tucker? No, he doesn't answer calls. But so to me, that was one where I had to stretch outside of my creative norm. I'll never be a guy who gets cast in a musical in a singing role. I will be cast in a musical as characters like Mayor Shin from The Music Man, who is one of, who is a foible for our leading man and doesn't have to sing any songs.
Well, I mean, for something to be a musical, would you say is the defining characteristic of a musical that the story is being advanced by singing?
No, I think
what makes it a musical then?
I think a character sings within the show more than once, because there's a definition. There's a thing called a backstage musical, where somebody sings and the songs don't necessarily have anything to do with the plot. And then there's another one called On Stage, where the songs actually move the plot forward. So, for example, The Blues Brothers is a backstage musical because everything that they sing, it is a musical. It's got a musical, it's got dance, it's got everything.
Okay, yeah.
But the songs don't move the plot forward. They are set pieces within the movie themselves. Versus The Music Man. They sing about how much they love each other and how the town's in trouble because of a pool hall, and that advances the plot line of the story.
So Wikipedia is saying that Backstage Musical is a genre where the plot is set in a theatrical context and revolves around the production of a play or musical review. Okay, got it. Yep. So essentially, just then, music is happening, but it's not the plot advancement itself. Versus like West Side Story,
correct?
Where they're literally singing about, I'm feeling this, I'm doing this. This is going to happen next. Got it. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Another little wrinkle in the brain there. I had never known that before.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that the musicals where the songs don't push the plot forward are often just confused and kind of given another genre.
Okay.
So for example, it drives John Landis nuts when people say that the Blues Brothers is the greatest comedy that he's directed. And he's like, it's not a comedy, it's a musical. I directed it like a musical. You'll note that not more than like 9 minutes of screen time go between musical numbers, or something like that.
Right.
And so there's plenty, and then there's plenty of other things too, where I think they can, they're like, oh yeah, this is a musical. And I'll say, no, it's not. That like is what? Not a, for example, there's a forgettable movie with Mandy Moore and Emile Hirsch that drives me nuts. It's a movie called A Walk in the Cloud. No, A Walk to Remember. And it came out in 2002, I think.
I'm looking it up. I'm on the case. A Walk to Remember.
I think it was summer 2002. Is it? Are you there yet?
Wow. Right away it says A Walk to Remember musical.
See? And it's not a in the plot of the movie. Okay, so here's what pisses me off. And Tucker, I hope you'll follow me on this. In the movie, Emile Hirsch is this hotshot athlete at his high school, and he gets in trouble for
drinking. Wait, Mandy Moore?
Mandy Moore, yeah.
It's Shane West. There's no Emile Hirsch in here.
Oh, Shane West. Who's Shane West?
The guy who stars with Mandy Moore.
But that guy must look just like Emile Hirsch then, right?
Wikipedia is referring to it as a romantic drama film, coming of age romantic drama film. So was it turned into a musical then?
No. So this is what I'm saying is like there are people out there who are like, oh, like that it's a musical. And I'm like, no, there's a musical inside the plot of this movie. And just because at one point the kids are in a musical in their high school doesn't mean that the movie itself is a musical. I know that there are original musical numbers that get performed, but it's not a musical itself. But in this movie, so Shane West, who looks just like Emile Hirsch, Shane West is this hotshot athlete, and he ends up like getting picked up for drinking and driving. And so his punishment is that he has to be the lead in the school musical. And because they're like, we're gonna make you go hang out with the theater freaks, and that'll remind you that you're not such a big shot. And they do a musical version of Bonnie and Clyde or something like that. But what pisses me off the most is I thought, that's that dude's punishment. That's all I wanted in high school, was to be the lead in a show. And they're using it as a punishment. Thanks a lot, Hollywood. By the way, in the premise of that movie, she also has a rare form of cancer, and she's the nerdy theater girl, and they fall in love during this, and then that's why it's a drama, is because there's there, and then it's a young romance, and it's all about this walk that they take, a walk to remember.
I just read quickly through the summary in Wikipedia as well and tried to not ask you questions about different things I was reading. One of which was she agrees to tutor him in how to be in the play on the condition that he doesn't fall in love with her. Right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That is crazy. So was he was clearly showing interest then at that point?
No. In fact, it was like her cockiness was to match his cockiness.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. because he didn't want to embarrass himself because he knew all of his jock buddies were going to come to this to make fun of him. So he thought, well, if I'm good at this. And by the way, also,
it's just like the whitest punishment for drinking and driving I can think of is you have to be the lead in the school musical and kiss Mandy Moore.
And by the way, the tutoring to be better like in this musical takes like a week and a half. So not only does Hollywood think that the jock's punishment should be he has to be in a musical, but that any numbskull can learn how to be a great actor, singer, dancer in a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nope, not a fan of that one. In the same way that I've never been a fan of like when they show how much time kids have in between classes in movies, because it'll be like
really unrealistic. I mean, those kids have a lot of mobility around life too that we just are never granted. Like they're just like young adults basically.
Right. Like didn't someone have to run back and at least like get a biology book at some point?
I'm surprised they don't all just like show their apartments as well.
Right.
Like a bunch of 16-year-olds with awesome apartments in Midtown.
Just get it. Get on it. Well, listen, I'm so creatively fired up now that I want to make a movie about what it's really like to be a high schooler. It's going to be 66 minutes long exactly, and it involves some kid trying to eat a sandwich before he throws away his tray. Because I don't feel like we've ever had a really good cafeteria sequence either. So what I'm getting at here is even things like this still to this day will get me excited about what my next creative endeavor is. And just the other day, I was laughing at when I used to be on a morning show with previous guests, Scotch and Britta. One of my favorite things is we do these little audio sketches. And I'm actually going to send you a couple of those, Tucker, so we can put these in at the end of the episode. Nice. And one of them includes a character I named whose name is Jeremy Bearlocker. And and he's the head camp counselor at Camp John Mellencamp. which is a rock and roll themed camp sponsored by John Mellencamp.
That's fantastic.
And, sometimes for me, all it takes is the right character name or the right, like slight premise. And the rest is just amazing. So, okay, Tucker, I'm fueled creatively. I got to go do some creative things. I hope you do some creative things. Podcast listeners, thank you so much. And if you ever want me to wait for a minute while you pee, you just let me know. And I'll sit on the line and wait for you to get back. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Flush.
Rock 102, where the valley comes to rock. Good morning. It's Scotch, JJ, and Britta coming to you live from our studios here in Fargo, North Dakota. And are you guys getting excited for summer or what?
Oh, I am more excited for summer than I probably should be.
Me too. I already broke out the bikinis, the flip-flops, and a sunscreen bottle that is either full of whiskey or SPF 30. I can't remember.
Oh, man.
Well, don't start with the inner thighs or you could find out the hard way. JJ, let me ask you, why are you so amped up about summer?
I am going to adult summer camp.
Adult summer camp?
Yep, 3 days of camp activities and drinking, just like when I went to camp in middle school.
I've never heard about adult summer camp before. How did this show up on your radar?
Glad you asked, Scotch. I actually found out from our good friend and counselor in training, Jeremy Bearlocker.
Oh, hold that thought. Good morning, Rock 102.
AWESOME. We are awesome, you and me. Camp!
Hey!
Jeremy, for the last time, please do not yell into the phone. We can hear you just fine.
Not yelling, just brimming with positive attitude about the green trees, the blue water, and my new job that I'm so excited about.
Yeah, you know what? JJ was telling us about it. You work at an adult summer camp now?
Just on the mandatory detox weekends from Camp Pika-Pee-Pee, you know, I am so jacked about finally getting to spend time with adults instead of kids. Now when the campers wet the bed, I know it's on purpose and not just the trials and tribulations of growing up.
I'm really interested in this adult camp. Are there s'mores?
Yes.
Is there archery?
All you can shoot.
What about sing-alongs?
Only the best ever. I bet JJ didn't tell you the name of our camp, or you would have known the answer to that last question.
And what is the name of the camp?
Located in the Pacific Northwest, tucked between the place where they shot the movie Pet Sematary and Van Wilder, is Camp John Mellencamp.
Camp John Mellencamp?
Yes, sirree, Bob. It's an entire weekend themed around our founder and America's bad boy of the acoustic guitar.
Oh, my God.
You'll spend the weekend Jack and Diane style, meaning it's co-ed, and then you get to ROCK, climb in the USA, and we end every night with our signature cherry bomb fireworks show. Whether you are a big city girl or a small town boy, you'll be itching like you have crabs to come back next year.
This sounds awesome. I definitely want to come.
Well, we definitely want you to come, Britta. We'll have a weekend jam-packed with activities and branding.
Look, hang on a sec. Branding? Don't you mean bonding?
No, I don't. I mean branding. We heat up a hot piece of metal and press it into your unwilling flesh to leave the mark of Camp John Mellencamp. And believe me, it hurts so good.
Well, maybe this doesn't sound quite as fun as I initially thought,
Well,
Jeremy.
maybe something a little slower is more your speed. We offer a weekend for those that are a little more aged that takes things a little bit easier. But it still has our signature style. We call those weekends Camp John Cougar Mellencamp. Sign up today and tell them that Bear Locker sent you.
All right.
Thanks, Jeremy. Can people reach you via your email address?
Yes, ma'am, 24/7. Folks can get in touch with me at bearlocker@footlocker.net.
All right. Get it together, Jeremy. That's going to wrap things up. We will be right back at Scotch, JJ, and Britta on Rock 102. Rock 102, your FM rock station. It's Scotch, JJ, and Britta in the morning, the only morning show that's still using Windows 95. And the Fargo Downtown Street Fair is this weekend. The event celebrating its 40th anniversary. Lots of great crafts, food, and events taking place downtown.
You know, I don't know about you, Scotch, but I love the street fair. It's one of my favorite events, and my gutty works have finally recovered from the Red River Valley Fair food, and I'm ready to tackle... I'm going to get pork chops on a stick. And those strawberry fields treats.
This is probably the biggest downtown event of the year, and certainly the biggest thing happening this weekend. Should we get this?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Hello, Rock 102.
Yeah, good. My name is Daryl Butterslide, and I'm as angry as can be about you shock jocks always pushing the Fargo Downtown Street Fair.
Whoa. Hang on a second there, Mr. Butterslide. I don't mean to throw gas on the fire, but I don't see what the problem is with us, talking about such a big community event.
Yeah, well, what floods my river is the fact that you never talk about the other great street fairs in the area. Give everyone a chance. You're probably in the pocket of big fair anyway.
I don't think that there is such a thing as a big fair.
You just care about the fame and not us little guys trying to add value to our community.
Okay, I assume this means that you're involved in some other street fair or something?
Darn right I am. I'm the founder and grand marshal of the Gackle Street Fair, North Dakota's most exciting block and a half of art, crafts, food, music, magic, and physical challenge.
Whoa. Slow it down there, Daryl. Let's take this step by step. Now, you say that the Gackle Street Fair has arts and crafts?
Yeah, I would be curious to see what kind of arts and crafts you have there.
I'm glad that you asked. We have numerous vendors offering knickknacks such as rocks that look like donuts, rocks painted to look like tractors, and quilts.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of rocks. What about the grub? Don't tell me you're just serving up rocks as food.
I don't appreciate your tone, and I would thank you for not insinuating that we still eat rocks in Gackle.
Sorry about that.
We are featuring one food vendor with thousands of different tastes, if you want to know. The booth is called Gary and Terry Trumbo's Turkey Trots. And all the dishes involve their Minnesota-raised turkeys, turkey pot pie, turkey legs, turkey ice cream.
So their turkey operation wasn't affected by the bird flu outbreak then?
We will also have a juggling magician. We spent tens of dollars on a focus group, and we learned that what people expect is this type of an act at a street fair. Our juggler will entertain you with his ability to juggle.
Sounds awesome. What about the physical challenges you mentioned?
Well, those are new this year, and I tell you, we have an iPhone 3 that we're going to give away to the first person who can smash a toilet into pieces, throw the pieces into a basketball hoop, and then drink a sixer of Schlitz. This is based off the daily workout routine of America's favorite athlete, Michael Vick.
Well, we got to tell you, we got to go, Daryl, but before you go, when is your street fair?
The Gackle Street Fair and Stray Dog Roundup is this afternoon from 3:45 p.m. until 4:15 p.m. And remember our motto, there are other street fairs, but our sheriff is out of town, so have fun.
Well, the Fargo Downtown Street Fair is going on right now and Saturday. If you don't want to trek out to Gackle, head downtown for some fun. This is Scotch, JJ, and Britta on Rock 102. Fargo Moorhead's Rock Station, Rock 102. Good morning. It is Scotch, JJ, and Britta, and every so often we like to spotlight a brand new sponsor to the show. Today, that sponsor is Cowboy's Choice.
Whoa, easy, girl. Howdy, folks. I'm Smokey Ben Weaselteeth. I reckon you're familiar with my Cowboy's Choice original beef jerky, but what you may not realize is that I also make the best damn baked beans you'll ever eat. Introducing Cowboy's Choice Baked Beans.
Cowboy's Choice Baked Beans have that fresh from the campfire taste, slow cooked and flavored with hickory and maggot larvae. It's the authentic, old-timey flavor of the Old West, with potassium sorbate to retard mold growth.
Yep, it gets mighty lonesome out here on the old trail. All a man can depend on is the warmth of a good meal and the love of his faithful horse. Ah, now hush. Y'all put on them stockings and stand over there by the campfire like I done told you. Yep, the Old West can be powerful lonesome, but the flavor of Cowboy's Choice Baked Beans makes you feel like you're right at home. Here's my great-granddaughter, Starla.
Hi, I'm Starla Weaselteeth. Our grandfather ain't been right in the head for over 2 decades, and yet he continues to squander his money producing these commercials for products that aren't in no way approved by the FDA. I urge you to resist the urge to buy this product and encourage the ramblings of an unstable old man. An old man who is riddled with senility and is facing several charges of horse molestation.
Ain't she cute? I found her under a rock out on the trail way back in 1997. I should have left her there on account of now she's trying to have me committed. I'll let you in on a secret, though. You gotta get up pretty early in the morning to outsmart old Ben Weaselteeth. I cut her and all them other gold diggers out of my will years ago. That's how I can continue to afford to serve up the best the Old West has to offer. Come on, Trigger. You and I got a date. Don't you be sassing me.
Cowboy's Choice Baked Beans. Available in original, brown sugar and bacon, and skunk flavor. It's what crazy tastes like.
The Rock 102 Morning Show with Scotch, JJ, and Britta on Rock 102.
How many times has this happened to you?
Hi, Cheryl. Great party. The food and drinks are awesome, but how about playing some music?
Sorry, Richie. I couldn't find the right sound. Pop music is too sexist, and country makes me want to get a root canal. It's hard these days to find high-quality music that appeals to everyone.
Oh, then you haven't heard about Britta Plays the Classics, then.
Britta Plays the Classics? What's that?
Hi, I'm radio personality and Miss Sargent County third runner-up Britta Lee. For years, I have been refining my personal sound, and now you can enjoy hit songs like Rubber Band Man, Rich Girl, and Spirit of the Radio, played by America's favorite mouth instrument, the kazoo.
You've never truly heard these classics until Britta makes them her own on the kazoo. The static melodies will keep you dancing until dawn. Hear kazooed versions of Highway to Hell, maybe you're looking for the perfect first dance song for your wedding. Look no further than Don't Wanna Miss a Thing, made even sweeter when played by Britta on the kazoo.
You can even request songs. Gene Simmons had me do the entire Kiss discography for him. God Gave Rock and Roll to You required me to use both my nose and mouth to get the kazoo harmonies just right. Please note that due to an infection, I'm unable to play any Guns N' Roses songs because it requires additional kazoos in additional areas, and I just don't have the strength for it.
Act now and score yourself a bonus ringtone track. Think about how cool you'll look when this little ditty plays on your phone at work.
What do you think of my party, Richie?
This is the best party I've ever been to. Where did you get this awesome music?
Shh, that's a secret between me and Britta.
Found exclusively on iTunes. Purchase Britta Plays the Classics today and take your next party from a 10 to an 11, which is better because it's one notch above a 10.
The Rock 102 Morning Show with Scotch, JJ, and Britta on Rock 102.